Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Welcome to the Rise to Lead podcast. I'm super happy to have this opportunity to chat with my dear friend, Lisa Jendza from Detroit. Lisa, welcome to my stage.
Oh, thank you so much, Regina. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's always lovely to reconnect with you. Lisa, we met quite a few years ago through a coaching program and group. We were both a part of that group, and we've been in touch ever since, on and off. And you've also invited me in the past. You invited me to write for your magazine, and we've had some other projects together, collaboration projects, and we've always, in some way or other, supported each other. So I'm so glad that you're here today with me.
Yes, I'm very appreciative of that. You know, you and I are the epitome of a small business owner, left corporate to find ourselves, and we've done a lot of things. So I always love reconnecting with you because you're always working on a new project, as am I. It's really been probably the biggest blessing since leaving corporate is the amount of experiences that I've been able to have. And I always love reconnecting with you to talk about them.
Well, I love your projects, especially the Freedom Kitchen. So I know you're going to talk more about this. And I know that you also really love to discuss leadership. And you're an awesome leader with your Freedom Kitchen and some other projects as well yourself.
Yes. Freedom Kitchen is really the culmination of everything that I've done, which I think will sort of explain itself as we talk today. It's sometimes a hard leap for people to figure out how I went from corporate to cooking classes, but it really is a form of teaching leadership.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. I can totally see that 100%. So let me first introduce you to our listeners, for those of our listeners who do not know you and have never heard of you. Lisa Jendza is the founder of Freedom Kitchen Kids. She's on a mission to develop future leaders by empowering kids starting in the kitchen. A former IT consultant turned health coach, Lisa has applied her training as a processed food addiction coach and detoxification expert to teach kids what a healthy lifestyle looks like. Lisa has been featured in national and international publications for her detoxification programs, and now her cooking program, which is where our freedom begins and ends. Her cooking classes teach courage, confidence, creativity, and critical thinking. These are all very essential leadership traits, aren't they? While building community. Teaching both in-person classes as well as online classes, she's bringing kids together in the kitchen around the country. She actively, and maybe beyond the country if it's also online, right?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Lisa actively speaks to professional audiences and is uniquely experienced to lead the way for a new food system with a keen eye on food security, while contributing to the growth of future leaders, inspiring them to not only cook, but grow food as well. Lisa says, cooking is the competitive advantage for your child. And so it is. Now, Lisa, very impressive. I know there's a lot more to your bio, and we're going to talk a little bit about those other pieces as well. First of all, for our listeners, how did you start teaching cooking to kids? What's the story behind it? And what's your story, the relevant piece of your story for this?
Well, it all started with my own health challenges, and I had to go on a mission when I was 36 to solve my own health challenges, which the medical establishment is set up like an assembly line, which is interesting because I have a lot of experience with assembly lines. General Motors was my customer for 16 years in IT. And so I could see how the medical establishment had become just like an assembly line. And they sent me down the assembly line of specialists who wanted to dissect my body and do surgery on my wrists for carpal tunnel and just had me take Advil for the pain in my ankles. They told me it wasn't related to the high triglycerides or the borderline type 2 diabetes or the weight that I couldn't lose, or there, there were all these specialists I was seeing, Regina, and I went on a mission to figure it out for myself. It was chronic inflammation. It was a lot of cortisol, high stress. I was in a very high stress position on call 24/7. If, GM's assembly line went down, or if the OnStar network, which I grew the OnStar network from a small local area network to the large network that it is today. And I didn't sleep during those years, that's for sure. So I had to figure out how to solve my health challenges. And that's what led me on a journey to become a health coach and start coaching adults. Fast forward many years, I was asked to develop a cooking program for kids, and I hesitated. I thought, I teach high level concepts. I don't teach classes just for the fun of it. I don't teach, pizza and chicken nuggets. And I thought, well, if I'm going to teach this class, the kids are getting none of that. They're going to learn what real food is. And I actually thought the kids would hate it. I lost so much sleep my first semester teaching and found that the kids loved it. They loved it so much that they came back semester after semester after semester. They're still coming, and every semester my classes grow, and parents told other parents. And what started with 12 kids my first semester in 2019, last semester was 92 kids, and it's continuing to grow.
Wow.
Now I'm growing beyond my local area. Um, but the short answer to this is I wasn't looking for this. I believe it was divine intervention.
You can say that. Absolutely. Beautiful synchronicity or serendipity
Yes.
or both, right? And it's a beautiful story how it all flowed together and fell onto place for you. I love that the children really liked the taste of this real food.
Mhm.
I think once you experience it and you also actually get to make it to create something with your hands that then you afterwards you can eat and taste and enjoy, then it's a completely different story too. You appreciate it so much more. And they probably also got to experiment with their new recipes at home, and they had their families experience them as well. And then I'm guessing, right? But they probably got a lot of praise, and that's also a beautiful thing for children to receive.
Well, what I was able to do is incorporate all of my coaching training, right? So, as a coach, we know how to coach someone for transformation. And so I employed the same coaching methodology in my classes. What I'm doing is using cooking, since they are learning healthy food and learning how to cook. But my class is so much more than learning how to use a grater or a vegetable peeler. I actually employ coaching methodology to invoke curiosity. I use a lot of questions to hook their brain, to help them to think. I lay things out in class to give them options, again, to make them think, but it allows for them to be creative. I've been known to bring different ingredients to class and challenge them, like which one do you want? Do you want to use this or do you want to use that? I'll break them into groups and have them make the same recipe, but swap out a couple ingredients. So I'm employing a lot of techniques to invoke curiosity and creativity. Of course, they have courage just by getting in the kitchen and trying new things. And then I really push them to do critical thinking. So their homework in my class is often an open-ended question for them to consider and give me their opinion. And so that's where it becomes empowering, Regina. This isn't a right or wrong class. This isn't a class where they have to memorize and just regurgitate. This is a class that allows them to explore. I'm expanding them in every way possible, and they're rising to the challenge. And what they love is that they're being empowered and they're being treated with respect and that their opinion matters. This is where we start to move this into a leadership conversation. I don't know where else the kids are getting this level of training or coaching anywhere else. In most cases in our school system, they're being taught to just memorize and regurgitate, and they are taught not to have an opinion
Not to be creative.
and not to be creative. And there's a lot I could say about that. I am very dissatisfied. I put my kids through public school, so it's not a judgment. I'm a product of public school. My kids went through public school, but where it is today, I'm very discouraged, which we can say that that's what really led to my journey, even prior to my health issues. And that was the 16 years, or the last 8 years that I spent with Hewlett Packard. I was in a consulting role. And in that consulting role, I would go into underperforming accounts and I would ask questions. I would look at their systems and their processes, and I'd ask, well, why are you doing it this way? This doesn't make sense. Well, that's the way it's always been done. Or that's what I was told to do. And Regina, I hate that answer. I hate the
Yeah.
answer. That's the way it's always been done. Well, times are changing and we probably need to do things more efficiently. And like all the people at HP, they all had degrees, like they weren't dumb. And yet we just did what we were told. And so part of my initial prayer was, dear God, why don't we think anymore? How do we
The
get
conditioning, right?
the conditioning?
So
Yeah.
much conditioning. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. So I started to notice that because of my job, I started to notice that everywhere I went. I went to the grocery store, the bank, to the Secretary of State or the DMV, and everyone you ask a question to, even if they're telling you to do something that doesn't make sense, and you say, well, that doesn't make sense. I was recently asked, I'm an independent contractor and my company is hired, and I was asked for my personal social security number by the head of HR. And I said, no, you have my EIN because you contract my company. And they said, no, we want your social security number. And I said, well, why? And the reason they gave me made no sense. They wanted it to connect to my background investigation, which in the state of Michigan, they don't tie your social security number to your background investigation. And I provided them all of my information from the state of Michigan. And they said, well, we just want your social security number. I said, you know that that's illegal. It's a tax identification number only. And here I have the head of HR. And what she says to me is, it is not a tax identification number. It's a unique identifier. I have a toddler daughter. She doesn't work and she has a social security number. And I thought, we don't even know anymore. I don't know where things have gotten so convoluted, but we don't even think, or we definitely don't check the IRS laws that says that is a tax identification number and that we're not to use it for anything else. And so this is what I notice everywhere. I notice things like this where I doesn't make sense and no one is stopping to think anymore about what makes sense. What you're being told, does that make sense? I
Yeah.
understand doctors have a lot of training, but if the doctor tells my parents to jump off a bridge, they probably would. I mean, because they're wearing a white coat. And I just want everyone to stop and think for themselves. So, all I do in cooking class is I utilize ingredients and a recipe to get the kids to think. Just,
Yes, and may also help them question, is this going to work? Are these the right ingredients? So it's about not just following rules. You're giving them guidance, but and some instructions so that they can create something that they have never done before, but they are allowed to ask questions, I'm sure. So just like you were
yes,
asking them questions, right?
yes. With all of the increase in allergies, this was the number one question that I got as a health coach. Well, one, my clients would say, Lisa, I don't even know what healthy looks like anymore. I think I'm eating healthy. My doctor told me to eat whole wheat bread. I think I'm eating healthy. I don't know what healthy looks like. So that's how the cooking demos originally started. And they were demonstrations that I did in different offices, chiropractic offices, and places where I would do cooking demos. Because people don't know what healthy looks like or what real food is anymore. We've been so conditioned by the marketing messages of
Yeah.
we need to buy this or we need to eat that. But
And
now,
confused,
and they're
I might
confused.
add, because
Yes,
they are oftentimes contradictory.
exactly. Yeah, coffee's good for us, coffee's bad for us. One cup of coffee's okay. No, now it's you got to have three. Green tea isn't good for you unless you drink 6 cups a day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's nonstop, right? So we have to teach people to tune in to their internal belief system or their intuition, right? So, like, you've got to tune in. Is your body wanting this or not wanting this? But that takes a lot of unprogramming. I like the movement now called unschooling because I think we all need to be unschooled
Mhm.
from all of the conditioning and all of the marketing messages and all of the propaganda over the years. But the next question that I would get, aside from what does healthy look like, is someone in their family was diagnosed with an allergy and they didn't know where to start. I don't know how to get rid of gluten. I don't know how to get rid of dairy. I don't know how to get rid of tree nuts. I don't know how. And then it's so confusing, Regina. They now package things in the US. They call coconuts a nut. Like, they're not a nut, they're a fruit.
Yeah. It's
And
it's just
so,
so many things, because that's the other thing. Yes, talking about labels, when something has more than 5 ingredients, I'm not going to buy it. Punto final, right? Because I don't want to study all the intransparent ingredients first. But that's aside, right? I let you talk.
yes.
So much to this topic.
Well, I start with the kids. We talk about
Yeah.
what is a peanut.
Yeah.
Well, my existing students know, but my new students don't know. And what is a tree nut? And are tree nuts technically a nut? Some of them are fruit, so those are the things. Like, we'll dedicate a class to that, but we'll make recipes that use those different ingredients so the kids learn about the ingredient. They learn how to be resourceful, how to swap things out. They learn that they're capable, so that down the line, I don't get the phone call or the email from a past student or client that says, what do I do? I was just diagnosed with an egg allergy. Well, you know how to make a flax egg because I taught you that.
Right. They
And
have
you
the
know how to
resource.
read labels, like, you're
Mhm.
conscious. And so I think this comes down to a level of consciousness.
Mhm.
And we could say that leadership is a certain level of consciousness. It's a higher level of consciousness. If you're going to lead others, you need to have a higher level of consciousness. We have to actually start, Regina, with helping people to become conscious. And you may work with higher level clients when you're developing a leadership consciousness. I'm actually developing a leadership consciousness, but I'm starting with them by developing consciousness and awareness to the present moment, which most people are so busy. And because no one has slowed them down to coach them through that, they don't know where to start. And I say, it's okay. We're going to start here. And because it's tangible, food grounds us.
Mhm.
And so it's a practical application, but I'm really able to use everything in my arsenal, from corporate America to coaching experiences to all the small businesses that I've had, and deploy that to empower and raise the consciousness of these kids.
Yes, and I love that he said it grounds us, because I don't cook a lot in the summer. I eat a lot of salads. I just had a big salad right now. However, when I really take the time to do the grocery shopping, go to the market and really make it fun, and pick my fresh ingredients, and I make the time to say, okay, you know what? Tonight I'm going to cook something special. That is tremendously healing and grounding. Absolutely true. I do it more in the winter just because in the summer it's hot, right? And I'm a salad fan. But yes, I get that totally. Now, I see all the amazing leadership skills that you're teaching children, leadership consciousness. I have written a lot about consciousness and the new business consciousness and new paradigms in business consciousness and all those topics myself. So I'm a big fan. Now, I also know that you've done some online summits. Tell us more about those and how they also support those goals.
Yeah, well, my goal is to educate more people,
Mhm.
and obviously they can't all come locally to a cooking class. So I've put together educational summits and online events where I can reach more families. I think people are looking for, um, gosh, we're all looking for information. It's the information age. We're looking for a path, a clear path that we can follow because of the noise. There's a lot of noise. And so by putting together experts, doing some expert interviews, putting together activities, cooking classes, and things that families can do online with me, with their kids, share it with their grandparents. So here's the other interesting thing. I'm now the age of a grandparent. Not yet, but probably will be in the next few years. But I get contacted by a lot of people my age, a lot of grandparents who are helping rear the kids, babysitting, supporting, and they're wanting to cook with their grandkids because their kids are too busy to cook with them. And Regina, this was me too. This breaks my heart because I worked full time and the hours I put in to EDS and HP were, it far exceeded the hours I put in as a mom. Um, I was on call 24/7 and I worked a lot of projects where I worked through the middle of the night. So I didn't sleep well. I rarely slept. For 10
Mhm.
years, I rarely slept. And so I wasn't a very present mom. So I didn't cook with my kids. I didn't even think about teaching my daughter to cook till she was leaving for college. And it was like, oh no, we've got to do a crash course. And it was all box mix stuff that I taught her because pretty much, even though I knew how to cook, when I cooked, it was box mixes. But we ate out. We ate out a lot. And that really led to a lot of my health issues. So, see, I know where this can go, which is why I want to help now. I want to help moms and I want to help grandmas who want to cook with their kids. And so, when I do the educational events, it's a way for even a grandma. I just had a grandma email me last week about her 5-year-old grandson. It's a way for her to say to her daughter, let's watch this so we can get on the same page and have a discussion. Let's do this cooking class together and see what we can glean out of it. I'm not trying to force anything on anyone. I present a lot of information, but in a curated, logical fashion, but then I give them practical application. Because I think in the information age, there's a lot of information. We don't know what we can trust, and then we don't know what to do with it. People
Right.
leave more confused because now they have all these ideas or, well, okay, if I wanted to try this, where would I start? I actually do that. I put together a course or a program for each of my events. The next one's in October. It's called Colorful Minds. Colorful Minds, but it's dye-free cooking. So the kids have colorful minds. They don't need colors in their food. And
Beautiful.
so, yeah, there
Love
will
it.
be very practical application
Mhm.
with resources as people are on, trying to lead a healthier life.
Yes. I always really like your titles. Also, Freedom Kitchen, you know that I often say that everything I do is in the service of freedom. So they
Yes.
resonate a lot. This is really beautiful. Love your projects, Lisa. So, I know you've also had leadership roles in corporate. We talked about it a little bit, and we talked about how it somehow, how you came to what you do today. Is there anything else you'd like to add as to how your corporate career prepared you for what you do now? Was there any piece that was positively preparing you.
I would say absolutely. You know, I loved my 25 years. I was at GM, EDS, and then Hewlett Packard. Um, I bleed blue to this day. I was an EDSer through and through. I actually grieved when I heard Ross Perot passed. So there was a culture shock when HP purchased EDS, which so my last 6 years or so were a little rougher, you know, but because of the culture change. But no, I would say overall, I loved what I did. Um, I have some regrets about not being more present with my kids and not learning sooner how to balance things better. I don't know how to accomplish work-life balance.
There's no
Now
such
I'm an
thing.
empty
That's the
nester.
answer.
I still work around the clock. I don't know. I think I'm a workaholic. It's probably probably some issue under there. I don't know. Still trying, but there's so many things I want to do and that I want to accomplish. And I want to leave a legacy. I want to make a mark. And I did, even in corporate America, I worked on cutting edge projects,
Mhm.
and I I liked creating. It became, at some point, it did become like like I didn't feel it was making as big of a difference. When I left, I resigned, and I resigned because I wanted to go change the world. And it sounds so cliche. Um, I've always known that my purpose is to set people free. It was freedom. Um, and so I'm looking for ways to educate and uplift. I didn't know that this winding path that I was on, because I want to share information, but sharing information through a newsletter and a magazine and a website just didn't seem to have the transformational impact that I was looking for, which then led me to start speaking and teaching and coaching. And then the cooking classes were really a culmination, because it is probably the most tangible thing someone can do. And when I have them engaged in a cooking class, they tend to absorb more of what I'm sharing, and the how and the why. It's just far more practical.
Yeah,
Um, so, but I brought all of it with me, like my systems thinking. That's why I'm looking at the food supply. So, as a health coach, I've been challenging the wellness community for almost a decade now, saying this is great that we're helping people to reverse these chronic ailments, but we have to get to the root cause. We need to get to the kids, because we have a steady stream of sick middle-aged people coming to health coaches, because we're not preventing anything. If anything, what I've learned in the processed food addiction course is that this will be the most addicted generation, because the processed food is everywhere and it's been made to hook your brain.
absolutely.
We don't acknowledge addictions. You know, addictions are kind of taboo, but you know, I was addicted. I smoked most of my years working in IT. I drank Diet Coke, like that was a big addiction for me. Coffee. I didn't let myself have coffee for years. I'm back to drinking coffee now, but I had to get rid of that too. I had to get rid of every vice that I had. Sugar and carbs are still a bit of a problem for me, especially teaching kids cooking. I'm around a lot of food, but we don't talk about addictions enough. And I see that as the biggest impediment to future leadership. You can't, if you are beholden to a vice of any sort, it is very difficult then to be a good leader. And my concern is the kids are addicted to their dopamine hits, right, from the video games. I
Mhm.
mean, heck, adults are too, with the likes on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah,
We're getting addicted to these dopamine hits. We're addicted to sugar. We're addicted to cheese. The reason it's called comfort food is because it's intended to give you a quick dopamine hit and then activate the morphine receptor in your brain, which numbs you. That's why we can't stop eating it. So when someone says, "Oh, I just can't get enough of that cheesy casserole," like those funeral potatoes, they're literally called funeral potatoes.
I don't even know
They're
what they are.
here in the States, maybe not in France. Here in the States, they're cheesy potatoes and people love them. Well, they've got sour cream and cheese
Yeah.
on them and all kinds of. Well, that's a comfort food, and that comfort food actually activates the morphine receptor in your brain, which then numbs you. And so, if kids are not being taught to be more conscious of what is food, how does it make my body feel? How does it make my brain feel? Am I in a state where I could do my homework or make a critical decision? Or are you not in a state where you can make a critical decision? But no one's teaching adults that. And we have people who are making decisions every day who just ate things that have numbed them out, or they have addictions that they haven't dealt with. And so that's all part of why I'm doing this. I saw this all in corporate America. I brought all of the systems thinking with me. Now it's a matter of getting to the root cause. So we don't have a steady stream of people who are coming to health coaches because they have ailments. And
Absolutely.
part of that root cause is getting to the kids. And the next part, which we might get into, is my involvement in the food supply. And that is, we have to fix our food supply.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this for sure because this is a big topic, especially in our current times. And yes, I wanted to just go back quickly and say, yes, I also was a heavy smoker for many, many years. And sometimes people ask me how I quit smoking, and I figured out that it wasn't about prohibitions. It was about allowing myself the freedom to smoke or not.
Mhm.
And I believe that was the only way I could have ever quit smoking at the time, right? So I did have a little bit of a push because I was in the process of moving to San Francisco, and I wasn't looking forward to running down, a building of, I think we were on the, I can't even remember now, 28th floor. And, for each cigarette, because it was not allowed to smoke in the building. So I didn't want to work an extra 4 hours a day because I smoked, that's for sure. But it was definitely a tough task to accomplish, hadn't I given myself permission to choose. And I think this is something that applies to a lot of those addictions. And again, it has to do with consciousness, right? Now, I've lived like over a total of over like 15 years in the US, but there are just certain foods that have never appealed to me because I grew up in Europe, I believe. And I've also lived in other places like Brazil and Argentina, but there's just certain things like those thick, fatty pizzas loaded with everything that would never appeal to me. I also ate actually much less sweet stuff in the US than in Europe because it was all too sugary and it didn't tempt me. It was not, I could look at it and I already saw the sugar and I said, I don't like this, right? So so it's also, again, we're talking about conditioning so much, right? It's also about conditioning again. And then it's not that I only eat healthy, okay? But yeah, there's certain things that just never, or in a supermarket, right? I would go through some of the aisles that I would never buy any of this entire aisle ever. It would
Yeah.
not occur to me. It doesn't appeal to me. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of, as you said, unschooling to do. There's a lot of, and again, I'm not perfect with food. I just want to say that again. But so there is a lot of unconditioning to
Yeah.
do for
You
sure.
had you had a wonderful base coming from Europe. And so Europe doesn't allow the food dyes that are allowed in the US.
Well, it's getting worse, I have to say.
Oh, it probably is. But I just returned from my first trip to Italy and the food was amazing. My husband and I both, my kids, we all just said we couldn't believe how good the food was. And we have been so disgusted since we've been back in the States of how poor our food is. And nothing tastes as good as it did in Italy. Everything was much fresher there. So um, I do think there's something to the mass production. And I do think it goes beyond just money. I do think that there's an element of control. And so, coming from a consulting position, I tend to look micro and then macro, right? So, especially if you're developing a system, or an app like OnStar, you have to be able to look upstream and downstream of everything you're creating. And what does this change impact? So you can't put a system in place without thinking about the whole system. So I've spent a lot of time, it's just the way my brain works. I spent a lot of time looking at our food system and then discovered the consolidations that have happened. And those consolidations were about control. And there's cartels. So there's an avocado cartel, there's a potato cartel. I mean, it's very disturbing when we look at the vulnerabilities and the choke points. So if you're looking at a system, what's that book? If anyone went to college for like an MBA, they had to read The Goal, which it was an accounting book, but it told the story of your system is only as good as the weakest link. Well, that's the way my brain works. We have a lot of weak links, a lot of weak links. Okay, so the things that I'm talking to the kids about are, how did this happen? Is this the way you want it for your generation? For an example, I show them there's hundreds of varieties of potatoes. I give them an assignment, go see how many you find at your local grocery store. And they check them off, and it's the same 2 or 3 types of potatoes. Why? Because those potatoes are subsidized by McDonald's and Frito-Lay. And then we get whatever's left. They don't grow. The farmers are like, well, I'm not going to grow the rest of these varieties because McDonald's doesn't want purple fries. The kids want purple potatoes. There's purple potatoes, red potatoes, blue
Yeah,
potatoes.
I love those too. I love them
And
all.
so I have some of the kids in my class now want to grow red, white, and blue potatoes. They think that would be really cool. I'm like, do it.
Yeah.
So now they're understanding. So we have these subsidies, and that's how the farmers are subsidized, but they're literally just controlled, right? And then we get what's left in the grocery store, but no one will venture beyond that. The big companies are the ones dictating what kind of chemicals to put on the crop. And so for a long time, I've said, I'm not sure if we're developing a gluten intolerance in this country or if it's a glyphosate intolerance, which I've been saying for 16 years in my coaching. And now the latest book called Toxic Legacy from Dr. Stephanie Seneff, it's exactly what she says. She's like, I don't think we really became gluten intolerant. We became glyphosate intolerant. The glyphosate is destroying our microbiome. So we're reacting to anything now, wheat or gluten. So I encourage a lot of my families, to read some of these books. I say, I'm not making this up. You can go read. There's more research here. But let's just think about it logically. Would you go get the Roundup out of the garage and spray it on your child's dinner plate? And they say no. I'm like, right, but see, we serve them glyphosate Roundup every single day because if we don't see it, we pretend it's not there. And we have to stop pretending that things aren't there. Okay, maybe 10 or 15 years ago when I started on this journey, people really didn't know, but we know a lot now. I mean, we know that Monsanto has lost lawsuits. We know that it's been linked to cancer. We know this. So we can't stick our head in the sand any longer. And so again, I bring that together not to be negative, not to be judgmental. I curate this information and present it so that it lands for people. Like, you have to hear this. This is what's in this food. So if we make it this way, if we buy sprouted organic oats, by who is it? One Farmer, you can get them at Costco. They've been tested. There's no traces of glyphosate. But Quaker, they were like off the charts. Environmental Working Group tested Quaker oats. They're full of glyphosate. So you're going to buy the one that, because of name recognition, because of brand, because it's at every grocery store, or you're going to go out of your way to find the ones that don't have glyphosate.
Right.
And those decision points that frame our future.
It's awareness. It's awareness that we need. We cannot just, put our heads in the sand and pretend it's not there. and go on as if nothing had ever happened. And it's like that with everything, really, Lisa, isn't it? I mean, there's so much going on, and we want to be aware. We don't want to dwell on it every single day. We don't want to give all our energy to it. That's not the point. We want to be aware so that we can take conscious action and in the right direction, right? So I wanted to also talk to you, and I know we've been talking for a while, but I wanted to go a little bit more, if it's okay with you, still in a direction of us serving as examples for others, and especially kids. How do adults, parents, teachers, others show up for and in front of children and teenagers, and how do we influence these young people? And so the question is really, how are we showing up for our youth, and are we modeling leadership, and what type of leadership? That's my question, really.
Yeah, I love that, because actions speak louder than words. This is easier said than done. I'll probably speak in a lot of cliches right now because I've been there, I've lived it. I didn't lead by example with my own kids. I was a stressed out workaholic who picked up fast food most nights. We ate out of boxes a lot. And it showed up in my health. What I will say is that in all of my coaching and my transformation, my personal development, I did a workshop with Sherry Huber, who's a Zen master. And I remember her saying, someone asked this question, because I don't want any parent listening to this to feel bad, because guilt is a low vibration. And so you will drop your consciousness if you stay in guilt.
Agreed.
So, but her answer was perfect. She said, kids do not need a finished product. Kids need to see a work in progress. As they see you evolve, they will evolve with you. And I have taken my evolution sort of public, as have you. We've been on a personal development journey, a leadership ascension, really. And so in public, I have bought businesses, started businesses, done a number of different things, some more successful than others. And with that, I'm always willing to bring people with me because we evolve together. So we're spiraling upward. That's what I want people to think about when you're in the presence of kids. Are you spiraling down or are you spiraling up? Let's just keep evolving. And it's okay to actually apologize to kids and tell them where you fell short or what you would do differently. One of the things that I did well, I got counseling. Actually, I went through some therapy before my kids were teenagers for some of my own issues. That made me a better present parent when they were in their teenage years. But in the early days of EDS, the Ross Perot mentality was, he called everything a coachable moment. So I would do something with the client. My boss might call me in and he's like, okay, tell me your thought process. Why did you do this? And I'd explain my thought process and he'd say, okay, well, I would have done it this way. Or what you don't know is that we have this other contract. And so you probably should have run that by me because you didn't know this piece. But you were never really in trouble. It was considered a coachable moment. And I always appreciated, because I wanted to learn and grow. So I wanted someone to explain why. I think kids are the same way. If we can explain why, and we can have those coachable moments and those conversations and treat them with respect, they will rise. And that's what I'm watching in my classes. I'm just watching them rise to a level of leadership, not just in their own life, in their family. They're leading their families. I have parents coming to me saying, I thought he or she was a picky eater, but now I think it's me. I didn't think that this was possible. I thought it was going to be too expensive to eat healthy. I didn't think my kids would eat healthy, and now they want to. My 9-year-old is cooking dinner every night. They want to go grocery shopping. I mean, they're leading their family. because they've been given the opportunity and we have coachable moments and they're evolving with me. And I think that that can happen in any situation. And I would encourage people like you and I who've been in leadership positions, who are consultants, who have that ability to coach. I would love to see more people leave a legacy by starting to work with kids. I think this next generation needs us. It's the first generation, you know, of and like dual working households and a lot of latchkey kids, and um, they're just capable of so much, Regina. And I think we can evolve them, help them evolve. But it does come down to what we're modeling every day. And if a parent doesn't have the leadership capacity or consciousness to do that, it's okay. I'm not judging because a lot of people are struggling just to hold down their jobs. I get it. Then find programs like mine. Find programs where they have that outlet to develop leadership skills and evolve.
Yes, there are so many points that you mentioned. I made a few notes that I wanted to come back to quickly, and even just mentioning them. First of all, we talked about work-life balance earlier. You know, I never use that term because I always say it makes no sense. First of all, you know, work is part of life. So why would I seek a work-life balance, work versus life balance, right? It makes no sense. However, even if we forget about that part, we will never achieve balance. We need to set priorities, and those priorities shift over a lifetime. And what we ultimately want is greater harmony and not necessarily balance, right? So that's first of all. I think sometimes it's also, sorry, sometimes it's also really, really important to use the right words, because words do matter as well. And I love, by the way, that you have been so vulnerable sharing your story, you know, and how it was for you and how you felt about not being fully available for your kids, and maybe only later because you gained greater consciousness. We're talking about consciousness, gained greater consciousness of the potential consequences. And you also have done, I'm sure you've done, because I know you as a very loving mother, your best to course correct as soon as you knew, and to also in a way make up for it. And I know you still, you know, I know from you, because you told me that when there's a big family celebration, then it's you standing in the kitchen for an entire day the day before. So you're definitely doing a lot to make up for that, Linda. The other the other word that you used that I really, really liked is the spiraling up. Let's always remember this, right? Let's never underestimate children. They can perfectly spiral along with us when we spiral up. I think that's very, very important to remember. We often underestimate children, and we don't recognize how smart and how capable and how even also oftentimes more evolved now they are, actually, you know. So it's just amazing to me what I see in children these days. Okay, so I just wanted to really have, you know, point that out. These are different items that I picked up from what you had shared with us. And you were so nicely in the flow that I didn't want to interrupt you, but I really think it's worth mentioning those. Okay, so now I know you have a recorded Lunch and Learn series. Where can people find that? Talk more about what it's about, maybe, and
Yeah. So I did a lunch and learn for Hitachi that I have recorded. And I love doing lunch and learns. I don't always get the recordings of them. Just like whether it's a cooking class for adults or for kids, I layer in a lot of concepts, most that are new to people, but it lands, even if it's something that they've heard before. They say they've heard it in a completely different way. So I love doing lunch and learns. The two that I have from Hitachi have went out in my newsletter. So it'd be best to sign up for my newsletter to receive that, which is freedomkitchen.net. To learn more about me, people can just go to lisajendza.com. It has a little bit of my history and some of the brands and businesses that I've created and where I'm at today. Shows a little bit more of the transformation that I've been through.
Yes, that transformation is truly, truly amazing. Is there anything that you're promoting right now? You mentioned the summit in October that's coming up, or anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
My fall cooking classes start the week after Labor Day, and I do get parents and grandparents that reach out, who actually tell me that they're learning right along with their child or grandchild, and that's nothing to be embarrassed about. That's the goal. I've been a health coach for adults for 16 years now, so my intent is to teach the whole family. So it's well worth the time to do the video lessons and the online course because you can do it as a family. And then I have the weekend before Halloween, I will be doing a Colorful Minds event where we talk about going dye free, which is obviously challenging around Halloween. So I'm trying to provide support to all of the families who are going to be inundated with food dyes and sugar for Halloween. That's a tough one, Regina. I mean, I let my kids go trick or treating. Now, I don't know what I would do nowadays. So I look to a lot of other moms, young moms who have creative ideas. I know there's the Switch Witch, where they only get to take a couple pieces of their favorite candy and they leave it for the Switch Witch, and the Switch Witch comes and switches it out for a toy,
Ah, okay.
something the child's been wanting. They turn in all their candy and it gets swapped out. That's brilliant. I didn't come up with that, but my event will be providing support to families because we're just starting the school year. Halloween gets here and we are consuming all these food dyes and candy, and yet we want our kids to focus in school. It's unrealistic, and we're putting a lot of pressure on kids these days, and those are adult decisions. Those aren't kids' decisions. Those are adults' decisions that are allowing our kids to suffer, in my opinion.
Right. It's interesting, right? So I didn't grow up with Halloween, but there was something similar that we had. And I only literally right now remember the Bavarian term for it. And it was Klopfermandeln. Klopfermandeln means that you are knocking on somebody's door and you're like, something like that, right? And we did that too. I remember that. But the concept of Halloween, I was only introduced to when I moved to the US in a way, or well, I knew about it before, but I hadn't really experienced it. I'm not a huge fan of that holiday anyway, but that's just me. So yeah, this has been a very, very rich conversation. I so appreciate all the wisdom that you have shared with us today, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. I have learned so much again, as I always do when talking to you. And yes, I really wish you all the success you can get with your programs, your projects, because they do so much good for people, not just for children, also for adults. And so, yeah, we need to get them out to the world.
Yes, thank you so much. I've really appreciated this.
Thank you. And I thank all our listeners for tuning in again. And I'm saying goodbye for now. Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.